Gareth Hampton.
Zicky, come into my office immediately. You have breached the Privacy Act, boy. And it appears that you've been stealing. You're fired.
Poor old Zicky. He had no idea what privacy really meant. And he certainly hadn't been stealing.
So you can see how that can start creating a conversation and opening up some discussions, particularly for young people. This was actually lawyers that she would sort of, young student lawyers that she would use to illustrate these and start the conversation going. This is just the last one. This one's a bit more focused on lots of legal elements.
Zicky's wanting to get out and about quite a bit more. He needs some wheels, desperately. First stop is what seems to him to be quite a reputable car dealer. He found himself a car that just suited his needs.
Zicky, don't be silly. You can't afford that car. This is a dreadful, awful place. That man is shocking and dreadful, and it's not a good place to be. This is a much better place with much better cars.
It's a fantastic deal for you, mate. Beautiful. I'll get the contracts. The PPSA is going to go. It's going to run.
We need to be really sensible and borrow the money from the right sort of place. No dodgy borrowing. My mum says we should always have full comprehensive insurance.
No, but I think third party's a lot better anyway. I don't have to know.
I'm going to pay. I'd rather we had proper, full comprehensive insurance, and we'll go to that AA and we'll get contents insurance for all our stuff as well.
Deal done. Zicky and Becky head off with their new wheels. Zicky can't resist going for a burn and taking the new wheels up north. Late at night, they head home.
You do realise that you were doing 108 kilometres now? And hello, what's this? You're on a restricted licence. You've got no warrant of fitness. You've got plus full tyres. Oh, this is far too much. I'm going to have to pink sticker the car, which means that it cannot be moved from this position. You are now required to take an evidential breath test. And under the new laws, of course, we'll be testing for drugs. Now, I've warned you before about this foul-mouthed back chat. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to arrest you on that. You are very fortunate. All other charges have been dropped on this occasion, other than the resisting arrest and back chat to the officer. Apart from that, I have to comment that you've shown a good deal of maturity on this occasion, and therefore you will be granted a 106.
It was just as well Zicky and Becky had bought their car from Boring Cars Limited. It had a few faults. Zicky's decided that getting a life is a bit overrated. He's heading home to Mum and Dad.
Going back to my roots, yeah.
There are a couple of others, but I think you get the head. Have a chat, just for a couple of minutes. What are the benefits of having such sort of a low-tech, fairly something really simple that you could create in a day or two approach to this type of contracts, or explaining contracts? Have a quick chat.
Yep.
I'm so shocked.
They're not as tough as that before either. That's a great They're trying to reach out very much again. makes it pretty accessible. Like, for me, I didn't get distracted by the fact that this sort of stuff can't be.
Okay, so what are 5 key benefits of this approach?
Quick to change.
Quick to change.
Cheap, commercial, attractive, marketing, employers. 6, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. What else? What are the benefits?
We add narratives to sort of have a story moving forward to keep engagement.
Yes.
So engage multiple senses.
So it's multisensory. Yeah.
It's consistent, so each time we're doing a different group, we've got the same basis for discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And do you think it'd be engaging for some of their audience? Yeah. Okay. So Jenny just wanted to share that, and if she was here, I'm sure she would be talking a lot more about some of the issues about breaking down the silos with lawyers. And there's a couple of questions that she's posed I'm going to pose to you first. But
Do you want me to link her in? Because we can.
no, it's okay, because she'll talk forever and then I won't get Sorry, Jen.
Don't say that.
Okay, sorry. Jenny and I are the generations. Yeah, she didn't like that joke either. Okay, so I'm wearing a couple of hats at the moment. One is from a mind mapping perspective and also from IACCM. So who's a mind mapper? Who's seen mind mapping before? Who's never seen a mind map? Fresh brains, good, awesome. Okay, so just a bit of context. I left school at 15. I was a teenage mum and discovered that I was dyslexic and had learning difficulties when I was 21. And my daughter is actually now 35, and I used to tell really lots and lots of lawyer jokes, but now she's actually a lawyer herself. I can't tell the lawyer jokes anymore. So, you know, she's one of these very smart, you know, just amazing lawyers, and I actually have to hire a lawyer to win an argument with her because of my learning difficulties. And I came across mind mapping about 20 years ago, and this is when I met husband number 3. That's a whole different story. Okay. But he taught me mind maps on our first date. He gave me the Tony Buzan's book, How to Mind Map. And I've actually since then have written 3 books with Tony Buzan and edited his biography. So I quit my day job in large corporates to help people understand more about their brain and how their brain works and how their memory works. Because one of the key things with a contract, we want people to be able to remember what the contract is about, what the terms are about, whether tomorrow I'll share a 168-page contract of €1 billion buyout when I was working in the UK, that I had to remember all the elements of it, have to keep that top of mind. So memory is a key element, understanding, comprehension, memory is a key element of it. So, and that's where I come in from mind mapping, and travel the world teaching people how to mind map, teaching them how to understand lots of complex things in a more simplified form. Then about 2 years ago, they discovered a golf ball-sized brain tumor in my brain, and I could not fly, I couldn't drive, I couldn't do anything for 6 months or more while I was recuperating. And Jenny knew that, because I taught Jenny to mind map, she knew I was sitting there bored to tears, and she said, well, with all your corporate experience and everything else like that, why don't you come and work with me part-time with IACCM? So I did that, and that was great. And now I'm full-time with them, I'm now fully recovered. And so now that's why I'm here from IACCM's perspective, and it was lovely for Helena to share with you some of those elements. And we're a non-for-profit research and advisory organisation with 40,000 members in 160 countries. So we're just here to support overall contract and commercial management. You know, if CPAs have got their association and engineers have got an association, well, why not an association for commercial and contract people? So we're agnostic, we're both buy side and sell side. So we do a lot of research, and I'm going to share that research with you shortly. So Tim Cummins, who's our CEO, asked me to pass on his best regards and cover off a couple of key things. From an IACCM perspective, what he's saying is the current contracting is inefficient. It's not fit for purpose because it's lost with all these templates, and I like the copy and cut copy and paste monkey scenario that was mentioned before. That was awesome. And the perceived purpose of a contract versus the actual performance of a contract itself. So the big issues is about how it drives behaviour and about what we're doing when we're drafting contracts and in the construction of those terms and agreement. So another big issue is confusing. A lot of contracts are unintelligible to the users in managing or implementing that contract. So we've talked a lot about from that user perspective, but also from a contract commercial management perspective, what about those managers using the contracts to manage it? I know with my massive contract, €1 billion deal, 2,500 staff, I had to follow that contract to create a whole new entity in 18 countries. So what we need to do now, we need to focus on the design, but a dynamic design and user-based design using digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, NLP, which is natural language programming, not neurolinguistic programming, and things like blockchain. We need to focus on these areas so that we're developing the right terms to suit the right form. And that's a mind map. Now, often with some of these comic and creative book contracts, often you might need someone to have a tool to be able to share the ideas and concepts. So from the 4 hours to the 45 minutes, what it meant was actually someone sitting there taking them through it themselves. So by just saying that that is the only benefits, here you go, and we're not actually going to have a conversation about it, is something that's maybe a little bit of misnomer. So from that perspective, could you, with my mind map, share what I've just shared with you with somebody else using these keywords and images? Generally? Yeah? Okay. Once you had a bit more training, a bit more understanding, you could easily do that. So that's the end of mind mapping from, I suppose, that perspective, and you've been sitting here beautifully well behaved for most of the morning. Yeah, that's you up there. So, and we're looking at breaking down silos. So, Jenny and I are posing some questions for you. Now, we know about half-half, lawyers and non-lawyers. So, if you are in the legal world, have a chat, and you can chat with the person beside you and have two different perspectives. Have you used visualization or other creative approaches to break down barriers and silos between the legal profession? Did you experience any resistance, or who was it from? Was it generational? Is that what the issue is? Old, I was going to say old farts, but I won't say that. You just did. I just did say it. If you're not a lawyer, share your thoughts. What have you been offered in the way of different approaches or methodologies to help remove that legal and non-legal, them versus us mindset? Okay, so I'll give you 2 minutes. Have a quick chat. We don't fundamentally I showed it in class.
Yes. I do a quarterly newsletter with regulatory updates on the superannuation industry, which is a very, very dry topic. So getting people to read it is a challenge. So for the last couple of years I've been using pictures to illustrate every story. So it might be a Productivity Commission release, or it might be a change in legislation, a bill before the Senate, whatever. And I've had a lot of positive feedback that people are now reading it and engage with it. So that's my...
That's great.
Yeah.
From another person? I saw a few hands up online. Who else?
Yeah,
Haley.
I use it pretty much on a daily basis just to break things down. So visualisation from using pictures, but also diagrams or flow charts, things like that. Even just adding a bit of colour, I find allows people to engage better. And now I've got a reputation for it. People just expect to kind of get that that's what they're going to get when they come to me, or they'll come to me and ask me to help them prepare a presentation that they want to do.
Something that's really brain friendly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So now let's have a look at the other side of it. For those lawyers in here, do you see the range of approaches being discussed weakening the hold of lawyers over legal things or increasing risk? If it's increasing risk is an issue of concern, how can we address that? The visualization and comments that become increasing as they become an increasing phenomenon. For those non-lawyers in the room, are you drawn to any of the techniques or approaches seen so far as being particularly helpful for you to demonstrate how we can break down the silos when you're talking with the lawyers in your organisation? Have a quick chat.
I'm from a community legal background. So for me, I don't know, breaking that kind of divide between lawyers and having all the knowledge and everyone else is working in the dark. So I'm not from that point of view where, oh, this is, no, we're making it. So I just see everyone in this room that it's all about
if I were not that I reckon that's because it's not, it's just like it's such a different world as opposed to the world that's about accessibility. It's not
There's another step when you're making
So wrap up your conversation. Okay, so comments. Don't make me pick you out. Well done, Kim. Kim.
I think that it does weaken the hold of lawyers, and I think that's a good thing. And that, and then bringing in the additional perspectives is actually making for a better product or content.
Okay.
I don't think that it changes the role of lawyers. I think it weakens it because there are still the basic concepts of what a contract is, and therefore they've got to be incorporated in any documents anyway. That's the first point. Secondly, I think the clients are basically lazy, so they don't really want to do it anyway, so they'll still pass it to the lawyers to do the drafting. The greatest risk that I see is that whilst it's performing and everyone's happy, it'll never get tested, which is terrific, where we want to get performance. The whole contract should be about getting performance. And if that's achieved, there'll never be an issue. If it goes to court, that's what concerns me. I just have no idea what a court will do with it. The less words that are there, the more risk a court will throw it out. And if they throw it out, then until it gets to a high court or to the higher courts, who knows what's going to happen. But ultimately, the first decision could be a real problem.
Are we saying this approach is the only approach? Can we not give them the full terms and the whole the full wordy document and the other document and
I'd like to answer you on that. I think, in principle, the concern you have is shared by a lot of people. But I think if we break it down as lawyers, firstly, whatever contract's going to end up in court is going to be, that contract will be evaluated on its own terms, as every text contract is also evaluated on its own terms. If it's badly done, it may or may not be binding, if the necessary elements are there, or then clauses might be ambiguous, and they will have to be interpreted with the same rules of interpretation that apply to text agreements. So I don't actually think that there is a distinction to be made between contracts that are visual or that include visualizations and any other contract. They're all going to be judged on its own merits.
I'd like to think that. My concern is, having run a lot of cases, with the greatest respect of the judges, I've just seen them throw stuff out which should have never been thrown out. And that's the greatest concern I've got, is that if it goes to a judge who just has no conception and doesn't want any part of this newfangled stuff, and they simply have a block view, then that's the issue I have. So theoretically, I agree with you, and I agree with all your concepts. I'm just concerned that the underlying conservative nature of some judges could be a problem, and depending upon whoever gets the first lot of contracts, whether that problem will come to fruition or not, I just don't know. That's the concern I have.
The thing that we need to do is, like with any innovation, we need to start and to try things like with blockchain and the bitcoins and all the other innovations over the years. Initial resistance, then we've got a few champions, and over time adoption happens and change happens. So yes,
the only difference is we're now treading on the toes of the expert in that area. The judges will accept blockchain, they'll accept medical, they'll accept valuation, because it's not what they do. They're not a lawyer. But we're going as lawyers to a lawyer saying this is how it should be done.
Yeah.
And they will have their own views on it. It's like the same arguments of, do we accept the principle that you can't accept evidence of what the party's intentions are. And there are all these exceptions to the rules of getting it in.
Okay, so we're gonna tomorrow in that workshop a bit more of that. Last thing before I have to go on.
I think it's a really good point actually, and I think the presentation, the presentation from the group from Finland really addressed that, because there's an in-between place, right?
Yeah.
So there's this place where you have the full text, and there's this place where you have the user-friendly text and images. So there's a possibility, because that point is a really good point, and it's also how do you get buy-in? So come back to that point, how do I get buy-in, right? Because people don't want to take risks, and that's okay. That is fine. So how do you address the risk?
Yes.
So I think there's a mid-place.
Yes.
Can I ask a bit of a different one? Because I think my main concern is not so much if it's going to be enforceable or not. It's that we've already narrowed the skill set required to deal with legal contracts to lawyers, to the large part. If we're now requiring a subset of lawyers who are also artists and also have that artistic bent to be the only ones who can modify a contract or draft one in the first place, there's a risk that we're creating a skill crunch even further, not the opposite.
It's an interesting perspective. Others may have a different point of view. So these are all some of the questions that you might need to address or just to consider when you're looking at adopting this, even just trying to, go past the edges, I think outside the square, as what was mentioned before. Just in the instance of time, what I was going to do was I get you to tell me what is the purpose of a contract, but I'll just tell you, it's easier, quicker. IACCM recently did some research, 575 people across industry, multiple countries, told us what is the purpose of a contract. And it was these 11 things: a record of rights and responsibilities, providing protection and remedies, a framework for mutually successful business outcome, a tool for risk apportionment, support a business relationship, governance and performance management, a tool for risk management, an effective communication tool with those with the need to know, providing operational guidance, an instrument for generating financial benefit, and demonstrating brand and corporate values. Now, effective communication tool is one example that we've used here. So, but there are other elements or other areas where this comic and creative contracts can benefit a contract. So we just want to make sure to highlight that the purpose of the contract is variable based on the nature and sophistication of the counterparties and the transaction. But regardless if there's a big gap between perceived purpose and actual performance. So whether we're talking really large contracts or small contracts, or just using icons in contract visualization. Gemini, for example, is an electricity company. They at least started to use icons down the side to identify where the different segments of the contract are. So of those 11 things, from your perspective, how can comic contracts help fulfill some of these purposes? You pick any one.
I think it can be a tool for risk management. So if you're combining it with your standard terms and contracts and the words, you're actually mitigating some of that risk of people not understanding what they're signing.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, it can be a risk management for some people.
Another thought?
Number 3.
How?
It's a framework. It's going to be mutually understood because it's easy to visualise exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. One more?
5.
5? Why 5?
Well, it just sets up the whole success of the relationship. My whole thing tomorrow is going to be about graphics and relationships. So for me, that's a key piece.
So we've got B2B contracts as well as B2C contracts, don't we? And we have, whether it's in public sector or private sector as well. Okay, so the research showed there are 5 areas where there's some significant shortfalls against the purpose. How could comic and creative contracting improve these shortfalls?
It should be an effective communication tool for those with the need to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think comic contracts wouldn't be effective as a tool for risk management from the traditional legal perspective, because the way in which it manages the risk of failure is by actually trying to increase the chances of success. So in that way, obviously, it manages the risks, but not in the traditional legal sense, where you're covering scenarios of what can possibly go wrong. Because when you illustrate those bad scenarios, you're signaling a wrong. You're undermining the relationship that you're wanting to create.
Yeah, so it may not apply for everything. It was interesting, we facilitated a workshop and people were looking at number 9 different topics on relational contracting, and one of the topics was risk management, and they said, no, from our perspective, it's risk and opportunity management. So we're not just managing risk, but let's manage the opportunities. How can we bring more to the contract? Quickly, just does organisational size have an impact on successful application? Is it easier if you're a smaller company like Ericom, or is it like a small government department, a local government, or compared to, say, a large multinational with lots of users and stakeholders? maybe something to think about.
I think it does. We're a large and diverse organisation, and we have to pick them up, we have to get our stakeholders on board one at a time. We can't just roll it out and say, here you go, everybody's using it tomorrow. We actually have to do a very persuasive marketing campaign and bring individual stakeholders who quite often have different drivers